right. Welcome to Benson Team's Beyond the Block, your podcast on all things real estate, from advice for real estate agents to tips for buyers and sellers and beyond. My name is Brad. I'm your host, and I am here with Scott Benson, the one and only. How are you doing today, Scott?
I'm doing great, Brad. Thanks so much for setting this up.
Of course. So today we're going to talk on three different topics, but it's going to be really casual. First thing we're going to talk about is kind of the best way to start in real estate. And then I'm going to kind of ask you about your story, where you started, how you got into it, and everything. Then we're going to kind of dabble into things to consider on your first transaction from both perspectives, in terms of the agent's perspectives and then also the buyers and sellers. And then lastly, we're going to talk about kind of tips for buying your first home. So what tips would you give?
Sure.
So first question I got for you, in terms of how best way to start in real estate, is what is your story?
Yeah, and I'm always going to be biased, and I think this is upfront to know that we all have a bias. My bias is always going to lean towards a team environment because I run a team and we have an amazing team, and together we've seen great success. So just know that up front. So the answer to your question is I believe, in short, that if you're new, you definitely want to join a team because they're going to fast track the learning. So ultimately in real estate, the goal is to get as many opportunities as possible in the shortest amount of time. And in real estate, and this is actually talked about for all of you newer agents out there or thinking of getting into the industry, we often talk, I would say, brokers or brokerage owners will often talk about, has the agent done 8 deals yet? Or has the agent been in the industry for a couple of years yet? What we're really saying is like, have they figured out all the little things that are, super annoying to teach? For example, how do I open the lockbox that's like 1 to the left, 2 to the right, then directly to the number versus the other lockbox? Or I have my first client, and where does he sign the buyer agreement? Or how do I get the confirmation acceptance signed? Like just little things like that, super tedious to train. On a large team, we have sort of people that focus on that, right? So we've got operations people, administrative people that can kind of assist and walk alongside those agents. But that is why I would say that it makes sense to join a large team, because when you're on your own, like, who's the support? Who's actually helping you figure these things out? You're kind of like out there on an island, and I mean, maybe there's a friend in the industry that can help you, but ultimately you're going to get that insulation that's needed in the team. And then my story is very simple, and I've said it many times. I don't want to bore the audience, but I came from advertising, and I was selling Google advertising at the time. I was also selling Yellow Pages advertising, and I sold it to a realtor. He was a young guy. He was a super guy, really good guy, and he doubled his spend within a month. And he was spending 2,500. He doubled it to 5,000. And I was like, wait a minute, this guy's 25 years old. He's spending $5,000 a month. Like, obviously, this is an industry where there's profitability. Maybe I need to look into it. And I loved selling. I love people. I have that genuine love of people, and so it was just kind of it was a good fit for me. I often say to people, if all of a sudden I got an opportunity to sell rocket ships, or something more expensive than houses, maybe that would be interesting to me as well. But for now, houses are, it's a good product to sell, as especially in Canada, especially in the GTA. And so, yeah, just fumbled my way through, and here we are.
Yeah. And when you started, like going to sales for real estate specifically, did you were you solo at that time, or did you join a group or start Scott Benson team right away?
So I started with my best man. Most companies, you'll find, if there's opportunities, then you're kind of looking to the closest person to you to kind of help you run. A good example is we met in church. And so it's like, okay, we need a content creator. I know Brad. I know he's a great character. I know he's an amazing guy. Brad, come on, we're doing great things. Let's work together. And so you kind of just build, an organization like that. That's my preference, of course. And so when we started, it was my best man, Chris, wonderful guy. And then it was my wife's cousin, I believe, shortly after that. And then, so I would say almost out of the gate, we started with 2, maybe. Well, no, that's not true. I had a great administrator at the time, Hannah. Shout out to Hannah. And Yeah, I would say we had like 3 or 4 almost immediately,
Mm-hmm.
and that was simply because there was just a lot of opportunities. I was advertising from the get-go. So I actually started my advertising campaign as I was getting licensed. So I would actually,
No.
I would, would build the site, I would test the site, I would throw it a test ad group, and then we went live the moment we were licensed. And all of a sudden, it was like, yeah, the phone's ringing, and people wanted to sell their houses. And I connected with another shout out to Taylor and Tyler, good buddies that I grew up with. They became very successful home builders, and I got some opportunities out of the gate to sell their custom homes in Oakville, and yeah, we were busy from day one, and really that was 14 years ago, and I feel like I'm still waiting to take the breather,
Yeah.
but we'll just keep going with it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely busy, but you talk about kind of networking and the value that it has, and I know you've talked about mentorship a bit as well. How important is that? And do you think it's essential to get a mentor when you're starting out, or do you think you can kind of make it kind of on your own almost?
Yeah, no, I believe that mentorship is crucial, and not just
Okay.
in business. I mean, I think that mentorship in every walk of life is
Hmm.
important. Even in my home, my older kids, they know that the younger kids, I have 4 kids, and so my older two, they know that the younger two are kind of looking to them for leadership. And so I tell them all the time, like those younger ones are looking at how you act and how you behave and what you do, and they will follow you. And oftentimes, I don't know if you've ever seen that show, Cesar Millan's, like a dog whisperer, dog trainer type guy.
Hmm.
But if there's a dog that's misbehaving or doesn't know how to behave or biting people or whatever, generally what they do is they'll stick that dog with a really really well balanced demeanor dog or a really mature dog, and they just kind of like have them walk on the same leash, so like that misbehaving dog can't get away, it just has to learn
Hmm.
the right way to go. And so I'm a huge proponent of mentorship. I had a guy out of the gate, Art Yamamura, who was very helpful to me, and a great broker out of the gate, Tina Garden, was very very instrumental in my growth. And then personally, I believe in mentorship too, right? So
Hmm.
those two names were real estate related, but yeah, in terms of personal growth, there's a few people that I can think of off the top that have just had a big influence in my life, and it's crucial, mandatory
Hmm.
almost. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then kind of circling back to real estate in terms of uh, gaining knowledge of the market in general, how crucial is it to gain an understanding of like the local market you're in, and how do you gain that knowledge? Like, what is the best practice?
Yeah, I mean it's a hard answer for those that don't
Mm-hmm.
have the experience. The
Mm-hmm.
short answer is you have to do deals. You have to be in the marketplace actually doing transactions, and that's how you get better. And that's why I think a team environment fast forwards or speeds up that process. If you're on your own and you're trying to like all of a sudden work a database or work your sphere of influence, like yeah, maybe you get some opportunities that year. Jump into a top tier brand. There should be thousands of opportunities in that year. Open house opportunities, buyer lead opportunities, listing lead opportunities, coaching and training. This Thursday we have a coaching and training seminar. So that to me is so important and so beneficial to a newer agent. But I would say that once you do deals, like I'm not a huge advocate of like get in the books and learn everything and come out of the real estate exams with 100%. That's fine if you did that. Good for you. But I would just say that if you have real life experience, I'll take that over a good grade.
Mm-hmm.
And so what gives you real life experience is actually doing transactions and meeting with buyers, and maybe you burn a few leads, maybe you walk through a couple of issues that you had to deal with in real estate. And I would say now, and this is a very true statement, today, 14 years in the industry, I offer far more value to my clients than I did on day one.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not even close. I bring so much more knowledge in negotiations. I can get more money for their home. I know how to work through difficult financial situations if there's issues on closing. It's not rocket science, but I would say that there's ins and outs that you have to figure out in real estate. And
Mm-hmm.
then, are we boring people because you hear the crickets?
I know.
Can you hear that? Isn't that hilarious? We got a cricket in the room.
Yeah.
Um, that is so funny. Anyways, next question. I'll go try and stomp on that cricket in the
Okay.
meantime.
Okay, so we'll move into kind of the first transaction and details regarding that. So, first question would be, what are like the key steps involved in the real estate transaction process? Kind of just walk us through what exactly goes and gets involved with that.
Yeah. So, like in the real estate transaction, first of all, you need a human being who's going to be a
Mm,
client, and I would say so. Then a face-to-face interaction
okay.
with that person.
Mm,
Hey, Bob, you want to buy a house? It's nice to meet you. I'd love to help you. Second step would basically be entering into a relationship called an agreement.
mm,
So that either be an agreement of purchase and sale or a buyer agreement. And then the third, of course, is finding them the home and writing up that contract or listing their house for sale. Let's I'm sure that we can hear this cricket on video. If we can't, just so you know, there's a very loud cricket somewhere
mm.
in this podcast room. So Brad and I are going to take a 5-second break. We're going to go stomp on this cricket, and then
Yep.
we're going to come back and sit down. Okay.
All
Let's
right.
go find out where this thing is because it is super loud. All right. The cricket noise is gone, and we are back. Back in action.
We're back. All right. So last we're talking about kind of what's involved in the transaction for real estate, and so my question is, what was your first transaction like?
Yeah, that's a great question. I remember it vividly.
Mm,
We were living in Oakville at the time. It was a Toronto purchaser, and we ended up racing to Toronto. This was back when there was no DocuSign, and everything was done by hand. It was a multiple offer situation. You'd only hear this story in Toronto. The house was beside the subway station. So it was literally like the subway station. You kind of walk in and down the steps to go to the subway, and the house was right here. And
mm.
every time the subway went through, the house would literally shake.
Wow.
And you can imagine that it was priced accordingly. So it was kind of a very entry level price point. And our client, she's a lovely lady. She that was her max budget. She'd been to her mortgage broker. The location was really good, and
Mm,
so the question was like, do you want to have to deal with? Can you deal with this noise every hour or whatever for the price? It made sense, and so we were actually in multiple offers, so competition. And I remember just sitting in the car and we're just racing to draw up the offer together. I had my colleague Chris with me at the time, and he's double checking to make sure we're not making any mistakes. And that was our first multiple offer situation. We won in multiple offers, and yeah, she got the house. So it was a fun experience, and I think we had the grace of the client as well. She
mm.
knew, we were new in the industry. We were very upfront about that. And always easier to work with a buyer when you're new
Okay.
because there's not as much pressure. Like this wasn't her largest asset because she didn't own it yet. She
Mm,
wanted to get it. If she didn't get it, we would go find another one. So like
mm.
there wasn't as much pressure as a listing. So, but yeah, it was a fun experience and great memories, and it feels like a lifetime ago. But yeah, it was 14 years ago or so.
Okay. And then also when you're going through kind of houses and doing open houses and all that that's involved, and with your first transaction as well, you do a lot of property inspections, I assume, kind of inspect the property a bit. And so what advice would you give someone when they're looking at a property and in terms of key things to look for?
Yeah, I mean, you just follow what a home inspector does, and a home inspector will look at the major components. So you look at the AC, the furnace, the roof,
Mm,
the windows, and I mean, if you're knowledgeable enough, you can kind of have a peek at the electrical. But I would
mhm,
say you don't have to know a whole lot about it, but if you want a high level idea of like where the house is at from an age perspective,
mm.
on the inside of a windowsill, you'll see like on the vinyl panel, or if it's an aluminum sort of strip in there, there's an age, there's a year. It's
Okay.
it's etched in there. You can see it in pretty much any window, and
Okay.
that generally tells you the age of when things was done because you tend to do renovations together. Not always,
Right.
but for example, if the house is younger than 25 years old,
Hmm.
and you find out that the windows are 25 years old, chances are most things in that house are 25 years old. If you look at the furnace, again, there's an age on the furnace sticker.
Mm.
AC has an age there's like a plaque on the side of an AC. It's almost like a steel plaque, and then you just kind of go from there. I would say that cosmetically, this is what you need to know about a home inspection. A home inspection, they can see behind the walls with an infrared camera for moisture,
Mm.
but that's about it. Like they can't really open up the drywall, tell you what the wiring looks like
Mm.
back there or anything like that. So it's mostly a visual inspection.
Mm-hmm.
I still recommend them, highly recommend them.
Yeah.
But what I would say is once you get the major components, like if the roof's just been done, AC and furnace are newer, windows are in good shape. I mean, after that, a lot of it becomes a visual inspection. Grading is a humongous thing. So, if the grading goes in towards the house,
Mm.
obviously there's danger of moisture and water
Flooding and
getting
everything.
into the
Yeah.
basement. But yeah, outside of that, like rely on a home inspection. It's probably the best $700 you'll ever spend.
Mm.
And we have phenomenal, in-house home inspectors that we work exclusively with,
Yeah.
and we recommend those to our clients for sure.
Okay. Perfect. And then the market right now is definitely difficult for first time home buyers for sure. There's a lot of financial difficulties, I think. So, being an entrepreneur and having that understanding financially, what advice would you give to someone to prepare financially for buying their first home?
Yeah, first thing I always say is you only get to jump into the market once.
Mm.
So once you're in the market, you're in the market. So pick which market you want to jump into.
Mm.
I'll always try to jump into, I would say, a downtrending market. You don't want to, if you're jumping in for the very first time,
Yeah.
you probably don't want to hit the uptick. You probably want to hit the downtrend. And,
Mm-hmm.
and why I say that is because once you're in the market, you're usually buying and selling in the same market. So if the markets are up, you're selling your house high, you're buying your next house high.
Yeah.
But when you jump in for the first time, you can pick like, do I buy when the markets are red hot and I'm up against 50 offers or 15 offers, or do I buy when the markets are softer and it's a single offer and the prices are coming down?
Mm-hmm.
My choice would be the latter. And so that'd be the first piece of advice. I guess the second piece of advice is work with a great team always in everything you do, not even just real estate.
Mm.
A great team in real estate involves a great real estate lawyer, it involves a great realtor, it involves a great mortgage broker, it involves a great home inspector, it involves great contractors. And if you have that team, and by the way, a great realtor should be the quarterback of all things. So all things real estate. So they should be able to just rally this team around you immediately. Certainly on our brand, we would have that team ready to
Mm-hmm.
go, and then you just enjoy shopping. And
Yeah.
the other suggestion I would give to a first time home buyer is consider what your next house is going to look like, because oftentimes I find first time home buyers will very quickly roll out of their first house, year and a half, 2 years,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of costs involved in moving
Mm-hmm.
costs, land transfer, commissions. So sometimes that extra 50,000, 100,000 to get you to like the next house that you probably are going to be in is worth considering.
Mm-hmm.
And we find a lot of first time home buyers, they're getting help from their parents, or maybe they're pooling money together with other people of their age. Maybe there's two families that want to live together, and so yeah, just put it on the radar, because you don't need an extra $100,000 to get that step up house. You just need to qualify for the extra $100,000 with a mortgage, and maybe you needed another $10,000 down payment to qualify for that extra 100,000.
Mm-hmm.
So that's worth considering.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And I know for in terms of the pricing the market, the biggest thing involved is location, and that really kind of uh, determines the price often. So first question would be like, how crucial is it for a first time home buyer to prioritize location? Because when you say they want to look for the next home, like maybe they want to prioritize location because it's very crucial and important. And also, what are the key factors you would look for in terms of finding your location, whether it be like perfect neighborhood or close to certain things, or what would be those key factors that you would uh, suggest?
Yeah, so I would say from a high level, like the best locations are going to be probably the closest to the highest employment areas. So, for example, Toronto
Yep.
has very high employment opportunities. There's lots of jobs to go around, and so Toronto is a destination across the world
Mm-hmm.
to come and live and work. And so, the location of Toronto as a city is a phenomenal investment. Unless you think that Toronto is not going to be a major city hub moving forward, but I do. So I think that it's a phenomenal investment. And so what you'll find is from Toronto outward, the prices tend to get a bit cheaper, right? You go
Mm-hmm.
from Toronto to Mississauga, Mississauga to Oakville, Oakville to Burlington, Burlington to Hamilton, Hamilton to Brantford or Niagara, and those prices start to come down because you're getting further away from the job market. And the first time home buyer generally doesn't have a choice. They can't often afford Toronto pricing.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say the answer to location is try to get as close to Toronto as you can. Not because you want access to Toronto, because you're trying to choose the best location. And the best locations are always going to be closest to where the most buyers are and where the most job opportunities will be. The
Mm-hmm.
same thing, you go to BC, Vancouver, and you'll find the same thing. Like that's basically how the pricing structures go. They start high when you're close to the city, and they sort of come down, and then you'll have suburbs. Families will flock to certain suburbs specifically, and so might want to pick your suburb of choice.
Mm-hmm.
And outside of that, I would say in every area, probably at least that we work, right, which is kind of the Greater Toronto, Greater Hamilton
Yeah.
areas, Southern Ontario, basically is the right way to say it. There's always going to be a couple of streets. There's always going to be certain school districts, really important. First-time homebuyers generally don't think about that,
Mm-hmm.
but the truth is, you know, school academic scores directly tie into the price of a home, especially with our immigration buyers. So, like, we have tons of buyers coming in from India, South Asia,
Mm-hmm.
China. Very, very high on their list is like academic ratings. Like, show me the best schools in the area.
Mm-hmm.
And for those of you that don't know, FraserInstitute.org, that gives you the rating of every school in Ontario out of 10. And so you're looking for schools that have like an 8.5 rating or above. If you
Mm-hmm.
can get into one of those school districts, your property is in one of those school districts, it's going to have a higher return
Mm-hmm.
than an area that doesn't. And now, again, prices follow those metrics.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to weigh out, like, what can you afford? I also think renting is a really good option that doesn't get talked about too often. And yeah, first time homebuyers are very eager to like own something.
Yeah.
And I think that it's a lot of that is the baby boomer, either their grandparents or their parents have instilled in them like real estate is a good asset to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Buy it, it's going to go up over time. But the cost of houses right now, it makes you question, like, is it actually a good investment? Could I invest my money elsewhere and rent, and would that be a better lifestyle for me? Would I have more cash would I have more cash on hand? Would I, would my living quality of life be a higher quality of life if I rented versus owned? And I think that's a very fair question to ask right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not convinced that, at least from an affordability standpoint, that real estate can go up and up and up. I mean, I'm looking at the affordability right now. I'm sure you are as well, and it just doesn't make sense in a lot of cases.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, if 20% of the population can't see affordability in the housing market, is the housing market going to continue to go up and up and up? That's that's up for debate. I would say the only reason that you could say yes, it will, is because Canada has very loose immigration. So, like, we are wide open to uh, educated, wealthy immigrants that come in. I think that that's always been um, a good thing for the housing market, housing prices. I should say it's a good thing for the housing prices. Might not be a good thing for the housing market if you're a local Canadian and you're trying to buy into Canadian real estate, but you keep on getting, outbid by
Mm-hmm.
foreign money. I'll just say a caveat to that is right now the government has put a foreign buyer ban on real estate. So if you're not a permanent resident of Canada, you're not actually able to buy. And that's to try to support Canadians that are already here getting
Mm-hmm.
into the market so
Yeah.
that they're not competing against all this foreign money.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a very recent ban. For the last 14 years that I've been in real estate, there's been a lot of foreign money come in, buy houses, they sit empty. So
Yeah.
again, it's jacking the prices up.
Mm-hmm.
So long answer, but in short, I think that yeah, location at a price point is something to consider. But consider renting. Consider renting.
Mm-hmm.
Like right now, I'll give you an example. Like a house that is worth $1.5 million is probably going to have a mortgage payment of around, don't quote my math here, but like I'm going to give a pretty good guess. Is probably going to have a mortgage payment of around 8,000 a month. Okay,
Okay.
so traditional mortgage, put 20% down,
Yeah.
you're left with a would that be 300 $1.2 million mortgage. So you're going to have somewhere around maybe 7,000 a month, 6,500 a month in a mortgage payment.
Yeah.
That same house you're able to rent for 4,000 a month.
Yeah.
You don't have to do the upkeep. You don't have to manage, repairs. You don't have to deal with putting on a new roof, property taxes. That's all paid by the owner. So that owner is not sustaining the carrying costs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like they're renting it to you for 4,000. Their carrying costs are 6,500 plus insurance, plus property tax, etc. Let's say their carrying costs are 7,500 a month. They're losing $3,500 a month by renting it. And so that's a good opportunity for the renter. I mean, you're enjoying a quality of
Mm-hmm.
life in a $1.5 million house and you're paying 4,000 a month. Yes, you're not gaining equity and yes, you'll never own that house, but you're saving $3,500 a month, $4,000 a month maybe. So it's worth considering.
And with the prices of homes in general going up, would that not kind of put pressure on the renting prices going up as
I
well?
mean, it's just supply and demand. So, and
Yeah.
I would say that we're assuming that prices are just going to keep going up. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not convinced on that. I think that right now we're seeing prices come down. And I think that probably there's a downward trend on the horizon. Like it looks to us with climbing inventory, 54%, I think was the last number, right? More inventory on the market,
Mm-hmm.
less buyers, 23% less buyers. So you have the two graphs are going like this.
Yeah.
So is our prices going to continue to go up? Not in the foreseeable future. It doesn't look like to
Yeah.
me. So I would actually say that prices probably will come down, and
Okay.
at best, I think that maybe they'll stay the same.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that that bodes even more to my point.
Yeah. And then so renting would probably kind of keep also the same pace as well, following prices.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on supply and demand. So like if
Yeah.
all of a sudden a ton of people started to put their properties up for rent, like I'll tell you where rents are going down is in the condo market. So the
Right.
condo market right now is flooded with inventory.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's trying to sell their condos. Not a lot of them are selling. So what's going to happen is those condos are going to get try to get rented out, and when there's a whole bunch of condos for rent, the renter has competitive pricing.
Yeah.
And if everyone's listed their two-bedroom condo for $1,700 for rent, the one that gets rented is the one that lists it for 1,600, and so on and so forth, 1,500, 1,400, and where does that end? So I would say that yeah, renting right now, even for myself, like
Mm-hmm.
I really consider sometimes going, wow, like I can afford X amount in a house. I could live in that same house and rent it for, this
Yeah.
price. I mean, it's worth considering. So, because you can
Definitely.
take that equity, you can take that money that you would have bought the house with, you can invest it, right? You can put it
Yeah.
into the stock market, you can put it into a business, you can, lots of ways to invest money.
Mm-hmm.
Multifamily's got lots of investment opportunities right
Yeah.
now. So, yeah, I would say, it's worth considering.
Yeah. And then when you're working with different clients, in terms of some of them may be very set on something and like they really want this, how what advice would you give them in terms of kind of separating their needs versus their wants?
Well, I would say that I don't like to jump in front of somebody's desires.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely.
as a trusted advisor, like I'm not here to tell you how to spend your money.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I like to do is make sure that you're not overpaying and you're not buying something that is a bad investment. But if you want, oftentimes I remember thinking when going through certain houses, like, wow, this place is like this is not at all what I would purchase.
Mm.
And it's like, well, who cares what I would purchase? This is not about me.
Yeah.
Like, what do they want? And so I've learned to kind of step out of the way of what they're looking
Mm-hmm.
for, and just make sure that they're protected on their investment. They're not overpaying, and yeah, I would say that kind of let people choose what they want to do. You'll find people in life, and we all know them, that they make investments and they do things that we wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
And are we being judgmental, or are we being concerned for them, or are we just cautiously guiding them? You have to make sure that that you're walking that fine line.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's just a straight judgment of like, why are they buying that, or why are they doing this? Well, that's because it's their money, it's not my money, and they can do what they want. And I think that's helpful to a lot of realtors as well, because
Mm-hmm.
I will hear realtors say like, no, you don't want that house. It's like, well, what if it's actually, I'll tell you a real story. So I had a friend go down to Florida, and the realtor down in Florida was showing him some houses, and he found a house that he really wanted to buy.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, the realtor gave him good advice in that it probably wasn't his best investment. But the way he said it was, no, you don't want that house. You don't want that house. And without maybe explaining, and I wasn't there, but what this is told to me by the client, but without maybe explaining, like, this is why you don't want that house.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the ROI is not there. Maybe the upside is not there, etc. But what the client heard was like, no, you don't want that house. You don't want that house. And he was like, well, no, I do want that house. And he found a realtor and he bought that house. And so he found a different realtor that was like, yeah, go ahead. If you want this house, grab it.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of just a anecdotal story around the fact that, like, remember that, like, we are not buying the house. The
Mm-hmm.
client is buying the house. We want to make sure they're protected, that it's done, I would say at the right price. That's very good advice. I think that's our job as a realtor, is to really put a price forward where we feel like this is value. And I even said to a wonderful couple early in my career, I think we're overpaying slightly, but the seller is not willing to come down. So if you're okay with paying that price, just know that, like, we're probably overpaying by 3-4%. I believe the market is going up and it'll catch up to your price, but we're paying a premium right now that we probably wouldn't have to pay across the road if something else came up. And they so appreciated that. They bought
Mm-hmm.
that house. I didn't get in their way, and they made money on that house and sold it a couple of years later.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Did you ever find it kind of challenging to almost separate your personal from the?
Yeah, yeah, it is
Yeah.
hard, because, like, we're human beings, and especially salespeople.
Mm-hmm.
You probably know salespeople in your circle of friends. Like, they're generally opinionated.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, I think those opinions come from a good place, and
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those opinions come across as self-righteous, or knowing more than everybody else, and that's certainly not the intention.
Mm-hmm.
But it can come across that way. But yeah, I think that can happen, and I think that we have to remember that we're there as a um,
An
as a
advisor.
as a
Yeah.
trusted
Yeah.
advisor. But the opposite is true. That this is what happens with often agents that
Mm-hmm.
don't speak up when they should, is then you just become someone who's basically pushing paper around, like,
Yeah.
okay, sign here, I'll just do whatever you say.
Mm-hmm.
Well, was there an advisor? Was there a trusted relationship? Was there an actual team effort? Or was it just like, no, the client's just doing whatever he wants, and I'll just facilitate whatever he wants, even if he's about to make a really bad decision, I'm not going to mention it. I think that there's a fine line there where you want to gently just say, look, consider this, consider this. I'll tell you something that you learn over time with real estate, but you'll shop with a family, for example, and their kids love road hockey, and you get to know them, and they just love road hockey, and they find the perfect house. And that house just happens to be on the corner of a street, or maybe that street has a slight decline. You can just gently remind them, like, I know this house ticks all the boxes. I'm just saying this because your boys love to play road hockey, that, like, this corner that this house is on is a blind corner, and there's going to be cars coming around this corner regularly, or that house is just on a slight decline, or that street, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And you ever tried to play road hockey where there's a
It's
slight
just gonna,
decline, the
yeah,
ball just keeps on rolling
fly
down the
right
hill,
down.
and like, so, like,
Yeah.
that sounds trivial, but I would say that it depends on your client and how much these things mean to them. But, like,
Mm-hmm.
you can mention things like that. Like, more important things would be, like, you want a pool one day. Well,
Yeah.
this property you can't put a pool in. It's either got zoning issues, or it doesn't have the setbacks in the lot. The back of the lot, most setbacks would be around, I would say, 4 feet from your neighbor's lot line. Um, those can be issues if someone wants a pool.
Mm-hmm.
And other times it's like, a contractor wants to put a detached garage in. Like, you got to speak up. You got to do your
Yeah.
due diligence. They might buy something thinking, well, it's 3 acres. Of course I can put my detached shop in. Well, they didn't know that there was a floodplain zone, and there's
Mm-hmm.
conservation back there, and there's, it sounds crazy, but like oftentimes in the country, you'll find there's like a protected salamander, or there's a protected
Mm,
frog, or so you have to go to the conservation and find out, like, can I actually put my detached shop there? It
yeah.
looks like it'd be a no brainer.
Yeah.
But those are things where you have to speak up and you have to be
Hmm.
knowledgeable, and that's our job to sort of
Yeah.
uncover those things.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's really cool to be able to gain an understanding of what your client values also. I really like that story of the ball hockey. Like you knew that their kids love to play ball hockey, and you knew that this could be an issue, and so that's your due diligence to speak up. And it's fascinating to kind of even with the protection of that salamander that you're talking about, like how do you gain that knowledge? Because I think when you're first starting out, it's probably a lot more difficult to know, like, oh, a pool's not going to work out
Exactly.
here.
But
And
that's my whole point. Like, you're so right. So like
yeah.
the new agent,
Mm-hmm.
they're making all kinds of mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
But you attach the new agent to a mentor and a team that has already gone through all of those mistakes, and they don't make those mistakes anymore because they're getting to bounce things off of their mentor. They're getting to bounce things off of the team. Hey guys, hey team, I have my first sale here. It's in the country, or it's on this road.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, there's a road in Oakville, and Glen Oak is the road. And it looks like it's a street where you could just build custom houses. There's custom houses everywhere, and Glen Oak has bungalows. And you go across the road, even on the actual other side of Glen Oak, and you can build a $4 million custom house.
Yeah.
You go on the west side of Glen Oak, and it backs onto a little creek. There's a 100-year floodplain zone. Once every 100 years, that creek might flood, and because of that, they don't allow any builds on that side.
Okay.
We would watch all the time these people come in from out of town, agents without the local knowledge, and they would buy that custom bungalow. They would intend on knocking it down, and then the house would go back on the market, and they were paying a premium for that lot. And it would just happen over and over again. And so, yeah, I think that, if you're a newer agent
Mm.
and you're working on our team, and it's like, oh, you're buying where? Okay, well, hold on, that's got a floodplain zone, you want to avoid that. Or that property right there has a height restriction, you want to avoid that area. That's just part of attaching yourself to people that can help you along and give you
Mm-hmm.
the advice that you need.
Yeah, and when you were even talking about your first transaction, you had a lot of other people helping you alongside you as well. That can definitely be very valuable in kind of that first experience.
It's huge.
Also, for just attention to detail as well. It's better to have four eyes than just two eyes, right? You
Yeah,
catch
yeah,
more things
absolutely.
on your first transaction. And then I'll just ask one more question, kind of wrap up in terms of tips for buying your first home, kind of circle back to that. And it would be, what common pitfalls do you see like buyers in buying their first home fall into, and what would you suggest to avoid that?
Yeah, I think that common pitfall is most first-time homebuyers work with brand new agents, and we're categorizing first-time homebuyers as tend to be younger, right? So like most first-time homebuyers are going to be younger than the second, third-time homebuyers. That's just a fact.
Mhm.
And so those younger buyers are working generally with younger agents, and they're newer in the business. And so, it's my buddy. We went to high school together, and he's a realtor now, and I'm an accountant, so I'm going to use him. Makes total sense, and I think that's a good thing. But if that newer agent isn't attached to a very good mentor, a big team, or someone who can guide,
Mhm.
then there's so many mistakes that can be made. And I would say that the biggest mistake is you're overpaying. Like a junior agent or a newer agent in the industry doesn't understand how to get the better price. And in every negotiation, there's a stronger and a weaker negotiator. In every negotiation, there's a stronger and a weaker negotiator. So the stronger negotiator is taking tens of thousands of dollars from the weaker negotiator in every deal. We did a transaction yesterday,
Mm.
and I'm intimating that we were the stronger negotiators in the transaction, and we saved our clients $13,000 for sure,
Mhm.
in the way that we handled an inspection negotiation. And I think that that's outside of the price that we got them as well, which I think is a better price than the next agent. And so that's the first thing I would caution first time homebuyers on is,
Mhm.
if you had the choice of learning hockey from um, one of the greatest hockey players ever, or someone that's been in the NHL for 20 years, you're going to choose that over somebody that may have played, high school hockey and then just never played it again.
Yeah, played ball hockey on a slant.
Yeah, played hockey on a slanted hill. Good point. So, and maybe you don't get, Wayne Gretzky to show you how to play hockey, but maybe you have, somebody that learned hockey from Wayne Gretzky and he's the one helping you, or you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
you want to tie into as much expert. That's one thing I will tell you. It's taken me a long time to learn it in business, but I have finally learned that if you want to be great in your ventures, and buying a house is one of those, you have to have a great team. You have to attach yourself to great people, and sometimes that seems like a higher up front price. So, for example, if you're going to list your house with a big brand, well, maybe their commission rate's a little higher. I can get this guy and he's going to discount his commission down to nothing. Okay, but you're talking about saving like 7 grand or 8 grand or whatever. But the truth is like that bigger brand, that higher commission rate, they actually saved you 50 grand
It
because
holds its value, right? Yeah.
not always, but I would say most of the time. That's been my experience in life. And so I think that realtors just don't do a good job of conveying that to their clients, right? So like consumer market just sees like, okay, well, you're X%, you're X%, well, I'll just go with you. Well, it's like, hold on, what's the value? Like, what does that person bring? Is this person a better negotiator? Is this person going to get me an extra $100,000 on the house? That happens. Like, that's a real scenario in real estate. So yeah, anyways, choose the right agent. Be very cautious on price. Second thing I would say to a new first time home buyer would be consider your next house and how much more that would be. And then third, I would just say enjoy the experience. Jump into the market where you feel the market is bottoming out. And we're all guessing, but you're probably not wise to jump into a market that's overheated, especially in this market right now. Like I would say right now is a good time to be very, very specific on, which offers you want to put in, and don't be afraid to put in a lower offer than the list price. Like this is a market to do that in.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
That was some great advice and insights for sure. And yeah, we'll see you guys next time on Beyond the Block.
Thanks, Brad.